Ladies and gentlemen, episode number 297. It's Ronsley. Welcome to Should I Start a Podcast? Do you want to know how to grow your audience for your podcast from Pinterest? This episode is for you because we cover how to think about it, how to use its principles to get to know your audience better and make useful content for them, which really is the whole key to your content strategy. So I guarantee that you will get something out of this episode, even if you aren't thinking of using Pinterest in your marketing. Because in this episode, you will understand how good content makes the audience love your work. You learn to use your podcast episodes to make boards on Pinterest and take a deeper look at interests and how to better learn from your audience. We answer a question about podcasters and how they use Pinterest with quotes and content. We get you to rethink your reels by adding idea pins to Pinterest and understand the search bar in Pinterest and why it's so important, because about the related searches that come with it and how to use it to your advantage. All this and more on this week's episode of Should I Start a Podcast? And make sure you listen all the way to the end, because I'll break down this episode to give you 3 small steps. Well, actually, this week it's just 1 small step that you can execute right now to help you take this listening experience into an execution experience. Enjoy the show.
Indicator 1, this is launch control. Please advise when pre-flight checklist is complete.
Indicator 1 to control. Pre-flight is complete. All indicators read green.
This is Should I Start a Podcast? A show for business owners looking for tips, tricks, and ingenious hacks when it comes to growing a business using their podcast. This is your host, Ronsley. He's interviewed more than 1,400 people and has been listened to over 5 million times in 133 countries. A TED speaker, author, and a podcast purist who believes that we can use our voices to grow our business and our influence. You know, because every conversion in any business always happens in a conversation. And now, Ronsley.
Today we're going to talk about Pinterest for podcasters because we believe that there is a genuine need to look into the audiences on Pinterest as a podcaster. So we're going to talk about that. We are definitely sure that when we look around, we see images and visuals being a really good way to get attention to a podcast. So obviously Pinterest is one of those places where that happens. So you know what? I'm going to hand it over to Anna because I want to know from Anna what drove her to make Pinterest such a huge platform for her social media.
Hi, thank you. My name is Anna Pacino. I am a podcaster and also a recipe writer and cookbook author and voice actor and comic. So the ways that I use Pinterest, I think there's a number of ways to use Pinterest for podcasters. And I was kind of avoiding Pinterest for a long time until I started to learn more about the platform itself and how much it can drive traffic to one's website. Now, I started off producing the Fitness Confidential podcast, and it is for Vinny Tortorich. It lives on his site. But because of the work we do together, he's the fitness side of the things, and I'm the recipe and food side of the things. There are a lot of people coming to me for recipes. Well, there's a lot of people in the keto and low carb space who are looking for recipes, who have no idea about the podcast, but who are looking for podcast content, looking for recipes, looking for things. Pinterest is very much a lifestyle platform. And if you have a lifestyle business or any other specific kind of business, maybe you're coaching, maybe you're motivational, maybe you're a business coach, and people are looking for content on Pinterest constantly. It's a huge search engine. And one of the issues with Pinterest I have found is that, number one, I joked for years that it's a time toilet, and it is, because you can really go down, as a user, you can go down the rabbit hole of Pinterest. But another issue with Pinterest is that a lot of it has become very bloated. So if you're actually providing really good content with clickable links that work and that drive traffic to a place that's a real place and not just some place that doesn't even have the content that is advertised. I don't know if you guys have used Pinterest. It's mostly women, although there are a lot more men on it these days. But let's say you find something that you like a motivational quote, and you like the way that it looks and it's beautifully laid out. And you're like, I'm going to put that on my board of motivational quotes. And you select that board and you click through the link because you want to see more like it, right? And you go to this website and it takes you directly to an ad for like something that's completely unrelated. There's a lot of that on Pinterest. So they've been trying to clean up Pinterest lately. And if you are providing good content on Pinterest that leads back to actual active links that are relational to what you're posting, the algorithm's going to like that. It is very bloated, like I said, but there's a lot of room for podcasters. And I kind of started talking about this with Ronsley a few weeks ago, and he was like, put a pin in that. Literally, we're going to talk about that in a few weeks. So that's kind of where I'm coming to it. As far as like, Ronsley, how should we structure it? Do you want to just talk about like a workflow with Pinterest, or what should we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been taking notes while you were talking. So the context is really interesting because when you started talking very specifically about audience and what they were looking for. And then you kind of related back to like who should kind of be on Pinterest. So let's start with audience. Let's start with that specifically for business owners, because you mentioned some really good things in here, like search engine. You mentioned that the content. I do know that if I am looking for new things to draw, it's really fascinating. I go on Pinterest for inspiration. So when I think about images, right, I do know that Pinterest works. We've actually done a few Pinterest campaigns for our clients. When I say I had no idea what was going on. I knew that it was being done. I just was not the expert in the social media space, but it was being done to promote work for our clients, their podcast. So it's really fascinating that this whole conversation came up. So let's talk about audience. Who is it for and what should they be looking to do on Pinterest?
Well, Pinterest and it all started as a mood board type of place. Like it always was intended to be a mood board place where you have your boards and you have different topics that you like. Let's say you are planning a wedding. You would go to Pinterest and it would be the place where there would be an aggregate photo of every kind of wedding bridal shot, of dress, of every kind of flower, lighting, venue, location.
Sorry, Anna, I have to say that I have a wedding board. Right now, all these memories are flashing back.
Yes, and a lot of men have secret boards because you can make secret boards on Pinterest too, because a lot of men don't want to admit that they're using Pinterest. But the fact of the matter is people are aggregating. I have designed and remodeled houses using Pinterest in the sense that I will say, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking I want a gold-toned, matte lacquered gooseneck faucet. And I will search those terms, right? And I will find all of the ones that kind of look like what I want, or I'll find my dream faucet and see that it costs $2,700 and I'll pin it to whatever property I'm remodeling. I'll pin it there and then go on a search to find the less expensive version of that faucet. You can also use it like when you're communicating with other people on your team and you want to build a mood board for whatever thing you're doing, interior design, food, wedding, vacation, travel. It's very lifestyle. It's very aspirational. However, in the past few years, there have been a ton of business people using it, inspirational quotes. If you take any sort of photographs and you just have beautiful photographs on your Instagram, you should definitely be taking those photographs and creating pins out of them. When you start to create pins, of course, the optimal size of a pin is completely different than the optimal size for Instagram, which is completely different than the optimal size for Facebook or Twitter. So you can convert that stuff over. But I'm just saying this to get you guys to start thinking about what you can do. When you create assets for people who go onto your podcasts, you should be making the same thing into pins. If you have like a quote and a picture of your guest and the topic that it is, you should be making pins out of that, making several pins out of that. Again, very easy using Canva. I say number one, get the business account, convert your account on Pinterest to a business account. You might need to make your personal boards secret boards and start over. If you go look at my Pinterest account, which I believe is pinterest.com/Anna_Vocino. If you look at my boards, I have a ton of boards created, which I paid my friend Danielle to do a few years ago. And she created a ton of boards that were relevant to what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And maybe what you're trying to accomplish doesn't have that many boards, but in my sector it is. We have low carb recipes, starters, soups, casseroles, Instant Pot, desserts, holiday, Thanksgiving, whatever the boards that are relevant to what you're doing, you want to create those boards and you want to kind of build them out. It is a community platform. So you want to pin other people's stuff to your boards. You want to start inviting people to look at your boards wherever you can talk about. If you're on Pinterest, to say to your audience, hey, if you guys are on Pinterest, make sure you check out the boards. If you're using email to contact your audience, say, hey, if you guys are on Pinterest, here's some pins that I'm doing. Please follow my boards. Because here's what I found. A couple of things. Number one, people are very divided about Pinterest. You either love it or you hate it. Full stop. Number two, there are a ton of people who are on Pinterest who are not really that much on other social media platforms, and they are looking for content. So it's like one of those things. And I know that feeling that you have, because I have that same feeling whenever when somebody's like, you know what you should do? You should do YouTube Shorts. You know what you need to do? You need to do TikTok, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, oh my God, don't add another thing. But Pinterest is such a huge search engine. I don't have the facts. I'm not like a Pinterest expert. I'm just telling you my experience with it. It is a destination place where people who are aspirational and wanting to find content are looking for stuff.
I love all this. I love where you're going. I've opened up Anna Pacino, and I love the way this is all structured, because this tells us that Anna's getting 92.2 100,000 monthly views on her Pinterest. That's crazy. So what I'd love is if anyone on the panel has questions for Anna, maybe around what she's already spoken before she goes next. So the team, any questions about what she just said?
Hi, everyone. Anna, that's fascinating. And I actually have a quick question just because you've been mentioning food-related topics. Have you seen podcasters use this in any way? And if you could share.
Yes, absolutely. I think as a podcaster, the trend that was happening on Instagram that may not get you as much engagement as it would on Pinterest, the inspirational quotes that your guest said that are relevant to the topic matter, the written word is surprisingly popular, especially right now on Pinterest. There's a lot of people who are doing time management and productivity on Pinterest. You can put checklists on Pinterest. You can make these beautiful in Canva. And a lot of podcasters are using it to drive traffic to their websites. And I wasn't giving Pinterest its due until about a couple years ago. Well, not even a couple years ago. I think it was about 18 months ago that I really started hitting it hard. And as you can see, I think only have like 2,200 followers, but I usually average, well, it's been low because I've made a transition in my staff and it seems to be picking back up again. The 92,000, it usually is around 100 to 200,000 monthly views on things. And what I found was I went into my Google Analytics. I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in on Pinterest for like 6 months and then I'm going to check in and see what happens. And sure enough, 54% last month of the new traffic that comes to my website via socials comes from Pinterest. And it's funny because I focus a lot of time on Instagram and a lot of time on Clubhouse. That's not where the new traffic is coming from. Although Clubhouse, I can't quite quantify that. But Instagram, I can. So to me, I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy. Like it's that high. I knew Facebook was good, but Pinterest was taking the cake. So I started going down the rabbit hole of all of it. And yes, I am in food in a visual medium, but I am a consumer of what podcasters are doing on it. And you'd be surprised how much people are using it. Now, Pinterest has also started to copy TikTok like everybody else is, like with Instagram and Reels. Pinterest now has idea pins and they are directly copying what TikTok is doing. And because they're copying it with idea pins, they're giving favor to that feature. So if you create a bunch of idea pins, like for example, you have a new guest on and you want to put like a 1-minute clip on there and you have the audio portion, and Pinterest never had audio before. They had barely any video and now they have video and audio. So you can use these very creatively and they will bump stuff up. And you can put hashtags in, but it's not as much hashtag related as other stuff is. It's more about the content of your pin, which they will scrub and see what's on so if you're using written word on your pins, which you should, Pinterest is not just for pictures. And in fact, don't put plain pictures up. You need to put words on your photos. The algorithm scrubs the photos for the words. It wants to know what your content is. And that's what it does. It does, whatever it does with its magic OCR. I don't know. So does that help kind of give the idea of it?
Yes, that helps a lot. And I'll definitely be checking it out to see exactly what you mean. So thank you for sharing.
I was going to say too, if you go and put your cursor in the search bar, it gives you a big drop-down menu. And for me right now, it gives my recent searches and then shopping spotlight. It has 4 things. And for me, it says anti-aging essentials, create your dream coffee setup, mixing metals, and celebrating Latin Heritage Month. So if you have anything having to do with that, you should be making a board and pin. And then it says ideas for you, which a lot of mine is my personal house remodeling, barn renovation. That's the project I just did. And then there's popular on Pinterest. And one of the popular on Pinterest subjects is homecoming captions. What the hell is that? I'm clicking on that because that's literally all. Okay. So if you had a parenting podcast, if you had anything where you're dealing with teenagers, anything where you're dealing with the parents of teenagers, I would immediately be making something having to do with homecoming and homecoming captions to drive traffic to your podcast. So you can look and see what's trending on Pinterest and make pins that are relevant to that and explore around and kind of see what people are doing. And if you look on Pinterest, a lot of people are taking screenshots of Instagram and just using those directly on Pinterest. But the other thing I see here is anything that trends as far as we're coming into holiday stuff too, or especially with people doing business podcasts, New Year's stuff, resolutions, time management, anything like that is hugely popular in podcasts. Anyway, you can speak emotionally to people through the pins. It works. People are there for inspiration. So just want to throw that out there.
So that's really fascinating. You're saying people are there for inspirations. They're there in a similar setup that they're on sort of Instagram, and you kind of like the content will be the same in the sense that that's the same sort of attention that you're trying to get, if I'm reading all this right.
Yes. And in fact, I just searched the word podcast in the Pinterest search bar. And the third thing that came up was a top podcast for women. And I clicked on that. And the thing that comes up, and this is a great idea, is people are making pins. I'll just give you an example of what I see in this result. Ultimate Guide, Christian Podcasts for Women. And it's like a stock footage, but it has like great words written on it. So it looks really clear that somebody would click on that. And then the caption is 15 best Christian podcasts for women in 2020. You can make aggregate type of pins like that. But when you're searching for things like podcasts or people are searching for different things of information, those aggregate pins do really, really well. So if you could aggregate together the top whatever podcasts, put your podcast in there at number 1 and give similar top 7 podcasts on whatever your topic is and make pins like that. That helps people discover your information. You can put quotes from the podcast, 16 podcasts to change your life in 2021. The top 10 best motivational podcasts for women on Spotify, 730 days of social media content, 7 highly addictive podcasts to listen to right now. And they're all beautiful things that people would want to click on. How I built my 6-figure blog from scratch. 5 empowering self-help podcasts for women. Now, this is just like scanning the first 5 lines of pins that I'm finding from podcasts for women. So put your topic in and see what's out there and see what you can do to play in that sphere. And a lot of it is just Canva layouts. I always come back to Canva. That's how most of mine are made. And I outsource that, by the way. For workflow, I might as well tell you guys. So I outsource that. I pay my assistant to make the pins. I use an app called Tailwind, which I love. It allows you to schedule pins. I tell her, I said, okay, like last week, for example, I wrote a new recipe. I said, make this into 7 different pins. And you're going to pin it up on 7 different boards throughout the week. And Tailwind gives you like a grid. So it's really easy to do that. And it happens to get a lot more engagement that way. Pinterest wants people on the platform. So the more things that you're pinning, the more engagement you're getting. It's not like you're going to do one pin and then all of a sudden like it goes viral. And by the way, as you're scrolling through these pins, when I search for podcasts for women, after you scroll a few times on the right, it tells you related searches. Top podcasts for women, best podcasts for self-improvement, podcasts for women in their 20s, podcasts to listen to, motivational podcasts for women. These are all Pinterest aggregating these searches for you. So for the user to go, okay, there's another topic I'm interested in. And trust me, it is a time toilet. People go down this thing.
Hey, this is Sandy Waters. I'm a radio host for over 20 years and help people sound better on their podcast. I'm on the inside of We Are Podcast members, or as we like to call it, the Whamly. If you were thinking about growing that business using your podcast and your online presence, come join us on the inside. I would love to meet you. James and Ronsley, they coach us to get those recurring results in our business. If you want that roadmap, which we all follow to get those recurring results, you can download it at roadmap.wearepodcast.com. Now, here's Ronsley.
And any other questions? I'm sure other people have questions.
Thanks for sharing. That was very interesting. I have to admit, when I was joining the first time a few weeks ago, you inspired me so much, Anna, that I went on Pinterest and started to create there. And I was thinking about, okay, what's going well there? And you mentioned recipes. So I thought, why not coming up with a storytelling recipe? So I came up with a storytelling recipe, like 500 words, 1 liter adjectives, and so on. And then I create that in Canva, put it on there. And then I thought, well, I have to explain what it means, because just putting them together, mixing them, letting them simmer, and then coming up with a good story, it's not really enough. So I made a podcast out of that. And I tried to combine the visual force or power of Pinterest with the podcast, where you go and put people in the same mood, like on Pinterest. So thank you, first of all, for inspiring me. And secondly, I tried to combine these 2 platforms with their best, what they can best do. So more words, of course, with the podcast, then converting it into a blog, but having the straightforward recipe on Pinterest. I'm only 70, have 70 followers yet, so I'm still trying to get myself out there. But I just want to put it out there, how I combine these 2 platforms. Thank you.
It's amazing. I love it. I think there's a lot of room to be getting more creative now, especially that they're doing the idea pins, which, by the way, if you go to my profile, you'll see I only have a few idea pins, and why I'm not doing them all the time is stupid, because I should be doing them all the time. It makes you pop up more into the top. See, the Italian dressing one has 44,000 views from one idea pin, which I wasn't even going to post that because it was, to me, a very stupid recipe that's like, that's not even a recipe. You just throw together oil and vinegar and herbs. And so I went ahead and made it and photographed it, and it got such engagement. I was like, yeah, it's time to start doing these idea pins even more. And the way that you can do, like what Bettina's talking about, putting video and audio on those idea pins is just a great idea to use it. I'm telling you, this search engine is deep. There's a lot of stuff in there. I know that they're actively trying to clean it up because it has become so bloated. Idea pins, you can only add, I believe, hold on, let me see if you can add it from the desktop now. No, you can't. So idea pins, you have to add from the mobile app. So again, they're really trying to compete with Instagram and TikTok by adding these things. And for now, until Pinterest implodes, like you know how people are always like, Facebook is dead. Facebook's not going anywhere, you guys. Same thing about Pinterest. It's not going anywhere. Same thing with Instagram. It's not going anywhere. So use the things that they are prioritizing. Like Instagram wants you to use Reels because they want to compete with TikTok. So make some Reels and put them out there. You'll be shocked at how much more engagement you get, especially if you make a few Reels and you just post them a couple times a day for a few days in a row. All of a sudden, things start really stirring. So same thing with Pinterest. Any other stuff you guys are thinking of?
I just have a question on, do you have any idea of like the age bracket or what kind of people are using Pinterest at the moment? Or is there no way to know that?
I'm clicking on my audience insights to see if they're going to tell me. If their audience insights actually pretty good. So if you go to audience insights and then you click on all Pinterest users, it'll tell you categories and interest, okay? Percentage of audience. They have all sorts of categories here. And then, for example, quotes. 25% of the audience is doing quotes, right? So if I tap on that, it says quotes by genres, life quotes, birthday quotes, inspirational quotes. So it kind of gives you an idea of like where people are using it. Total Pinterest users. Oh, and then it gives you distribution of the audience per topic. I don't know how to find out the general. It's known that Pinterest is mostly female users. And it looks like also too, it's mostly iPhone, which is crazy to me because I want to see pictures on my laptop where they're bigger. But you can kind of go through the all Pinterest users. If I look at my Anna Pacino's Eat Happy Kitchen audience from the last 30 days, it's funny because it shows the category and interests. One of the top category and interests of people who are in my audience, what they're looking for is finance, vehicles, architecture, health, food and drinks. Okay, now that's making sense for me. Design, sports, travel, electronics, event planning, men's fashion. So I have men looking at my stuff, animals, DIY and crafts. Like, and I have a pretty split 50-50 male-female audience. And I think that's because of Vinny being on Adam Carolla. But you can look and see kind of what your audience is doing. But obviously that's going to take some time after you've been posting for a while for those numbers to aggregate. But yes, it does tell you, although I don't know off the top of my head what the general Pinterest audience is other than knowing that it skews mostly female.
I have men looking at my stuff. That's probably the tweetable for this one.
I have men looking at my stuff. And it sounds exciting and it's not. So cool.
Oh, so the reason I asked that, and well, thanks for giving the breakdown. I don't know much about Pinterest, but from my experience and from what I've used it for, which is just personal, like mood boards and so on, is like it's used by foodies, graphic designers, those kind of professions mostly. It's only recently that you put it in my head that it might be useful for podcasters. And an interesting story is I actually had a client or like just kind of a consultation and they asked me about Pinterest and I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't actually know this was a thing for podcasting. So it's really, really interesting. But I was thinking that kind of like on Instagram and TikTok, you mostly have your like photographers, filmmakers. So I'm just kind of like trying to understand how do you balance it all out? If you have any opinion or idea on that, Anna.
It's mostly for podcasters. For example, the food and the recipes is a visual medium, so that makes sense to be on Pinterest. If I was not in that, let's say I'm doing a podcast about personal finance or a podcast about coaching or whatever you're doing that's not a visual medium, I would be making pins of checklists, inspirational quotes, reminders, quotes, tweetable quote, like something you would put in a tweet, put it on a pin with a picture behind it, something that gets people to click through. So you have to remember that people who are on Pinterest are very aspirational and they are looking for ways to improve their business, their lifestyle, their health, their relationships. So that covers mostly what we're all podcasting about. It's not going to cover everything, and I get that. But there's a lot of room to think about, wait a minute, how can I convert this into something that could be an idea pin and kind of capture those people? Now, if you find that like you're like, it just doesn't work at all, then this might be just totally irrelevant. I get it. But for anybody who this does resonate with, I just wanted to share my experience because it's kind of up the game for me.
Well, I've been just checking some stats, and for whatever reason, I get 950 monthly viewers to pinterest.com/ronsleyvars. So I'm not sure what they're looking at, but I'm trying to look at the analytics right now. And 69% of my audience is searching for home decor, which makes me think that, hey, could I create a pin that says top 10 places to enjoy a podcast in your house? I don't know.
You can do whatever you want and you can experiment and you can see what gets traction. We experimented about 6 months ago with, there is a thing in Canva that takes your static picture and turns it into like a slideshow. Like it takes one element and or it like is a wash, like it reveals. So it's a static picture and it reveals itself. And then and it's 5 seconds. For whatever reason, that dumb little eye trick gets 100 times more engagement than just a static picture on Pinterest. So think about if you have now they're letting you do audio and longer video in those idea pins. Think about somebody scrolling over your pin and hearing that and going, oh, that's an interesting, like juicy little clip that you've put from your podcast on there with the words and having it animated in the sense that Canva is just making it like, Holly, why can I not describe this correctly?
It kind of creates a video out of something static. I just did one as a reel on Instagram because Instagram prioritizes video over audio. So I created 3 pictures, if you will. And the only part that changed and moved was the bottom. Like I put top 2% podcast, launching new season, and each one would bleed in those words and move those particular words. So it creates a video. The way it is perceived on the apps is as a video because there's something moving. The words are moving in some way, shape, or form. They're popping, they're fading, they're bleeding, they're doing something like that. Is that what you were trying to say, Anna?
Yes, popping, fading, bleeding, exactly. Like it's the wipes in iMovie.
They are called animations, and you can go have the length from 0.5 to 15 seconds. And then you can choose your animation. So I always take the one that's called breathe. I thought that's good. And then the elements you put in there are actually moving. And as Holly said, you can choose which elements you want to let move. So it's very helpful, to create a video.
I might add that I did not see, when I posted it as a reel, I did not see the same numbers in how many people looked at it versus doing an actual video. So it is possible that I think I'm tricking Instagram, but they're saying, ha, 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 no, you're not, because I have to say, I got so much more when I did an actual video. And within like 2 hours, it was going crazy. I literally took a video of the National Building Museum where I took a yoga class, and that got so many more views than the 3 Canva pictures that I put some animation in. So we might be thinking we're smart, but Instagram's probably chuckling at us. I don't know.
I would agree. The technology right now is quite advanced that you can detect everything. Like OCR, obviously, is in Pinterest, is now native. So yeah, I'd say that's the case in a lot of instances. So even to that effect, you can add in a quick intro, which is maybe something you do all the time, and you can click it. Marketers ruin everything.
Quick intro where there's movement at the beginning, because the algorithm on Instagram is so smart. It picks up that there's camera movement at the beginning of the first 5 seconds of what you're making. And here's a mistake I made recently with Instagram. I shot something on the fly where I was poaching eggs and onions, hatch chili peppers, and butter. Shot it on the fly, edited it down real quick into a TikTok. And then I thought that Reels had opened up to 60 seconds, but it didn't. So I split it into 2 parts, made 2 30-second Reels, put it up on a Sunday morning, very chill, very relaxed, and then chose 2 different songs for the 2 parts that were, because it's literally copying TikTok, right? Then I had a steak au poivre thing that I had shot, proper lighting, and I had my friend who's an editor cut it together. I said, put some cool, fun, jazzy French music on it, like something really fun. If you can find an upbeat Edith Piaf, that would be great. And she put something on it, and then I didn't even think about it, and I went and posted that and got about, and this is the more cool looking one, right? But because I did not choose the music based on what Instagram was telling me was popular, instead she already had pre-put music on there. The algorithm was so good, even though I had the rights to use it, it was like a royalty-free music, it didn't do as well. And in fact, Instagram sent me a message saying, we're putting this on the, whatever the equivalent of French yacht rock is. I don't know. We're putting this on that page. And like, it was like a weird declassification thing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I should have put it up completely blank and chosen their popular music. So that's another trick you can do, by the way, is choose the music in TikTok and Instagram based on what's popular on the platform, because that will up the catching of the algorithm.
It's also not just trending music, but it's all the trending, like if you add their little stickers and stuff like that to some of your videos, that helps as well. So anything that they're creating as an add-on for you to modify it in some way, to add little sparklies to it, whatever, and music and all that. It's whatever pops up that's trending. Choose something from there. Don't get too creative. At least that's been my experience. You know what, Anna, I do want to remark on something about Pinterest, because I think as podcasters, we're all like, I'm thinking, okay, well, business podcasts, I can put motivational quotes. I can put what it's like to be an entrepreneur in another quote. A guest who comes on, I could do something about that. And we think that because of our subject matter, we can't post on there. But like all apps, and I could be wrong, Anna, so please correct me, it still comes down to being yourself, being your authentic, the overused word on this app. So if you have other boards, like for me, I've built 2 houses. So if I did boards on that, I was a jewelry designer. If I did a board on that, I love to cook. If I did a board on that, what it boils down to is if you show the diverse and many interesting sides that you have, it actually helps draw people in because they might find you that way and not as a podcaster. And a podcaster might find you and see that you have a similar interest. So they might also be planning their wedding at the same time you're planning yours or whatever. So am I wrong, Anna, that like you kind of pick up on all the facets of each person when you go to their Pinterest?
You are correct, because I've hidden my remodeling projects and I probably shouldn't have done. I've made secret boards out of those and I probably should not have done that, because I think you're correct that people want to see the whole person and see what's going on with your life. That's definitely true as to why my Anna Pacino Instagram is way more popular than Eat Happy Cookbook Instagram, because that's where I put my whole life. So yes, I'm always promoting recipes and writing recipes, and it's mostly food focused, but I will also put my dog and dumb shit my husband says and his new Jeep and the thing. Yes, those do really well.
I keep coming back to the sentences, your business is your brand is your business. And there's so much truth to that. It's why I've defaulted to using only Holly Shannon for my Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I used to have a second page dedicated to my business or my podcast. And all I was doing was duplicating the post from one and putting it on the other. But the truth is, you don't want to bring your followers. I don't want to bring them to the Culture Factor page. I want to bring them to mine, because then I'm diluting my followers and they may not see and learn about me. So I think at the end, it is about Anna Pacino. In the end, that's it. That's where you should be posting everything.
I so agree. And it is so friggin' fractured now. And where I want to pull my hair out the most is when, here's what's going to happen. So I just launched the pre-sales of my pumpkin marinara, right? I'm pre-selling it from September 15th until it's manufactured on October 7th. And I'm only going to make enough to cover what we've pre-sold, and then it's done. And what will inevitably happen is that somebody will hear about it or see a thing on another platform and they'll get mad that they missed it. And I'll say, well, don't you subscribe to my email list? Because I said, yeah, I do. But for whatever reason, it went to spam. Okay, well, aren't you in my Facebook group? Yeah, I am. But the algorithm maybe, and it's just, these things happen. Things are so fractured. I just feel like Pinterest is another piece of the puzzle to get people into the ecosphere of you as the brand. And that's the best that you can do.
So it's very fascinating because we started with Pinterest, went into Instagram, and then started talking about personal branding, which is obviously, it all comes down to what kind of content you're going to put out there. So I want to maybe land this plane on this question, because it's probably going to come up a lot, is like, if I'm doing all this stuff, what's the most efficient way to include this into our workflow if we were to think about getting onto Pinterest?
If you have a virtual assistant or somebody helping you with making your assets, it's not that much of an extra step for them to make, because Canva has pin templates, just like they have all the other templates for all the other things. So it's about making a concerted effort and kind of seeing where you can go. You can always delete stuff if you feel like it's not on brand, but honestly, I would just start to kind of sculpt a thing around it. Oh, there's somebody on YouTube, Anastasia Blogger, that's her account. And she's like a Pinterest expert, and she's so sweet and has wonderfully informative. If you watch some of her stuff, she has Pinterest for podcasters and Pinterest for bloggers, and how it works, that she might give even better advice. But she's one that I watched when I was first getting started. It's just about kind of looking at what your overall thing is, the people that you're trying to capture. If you have women in your audience, chances are some of them are going to be on Pinterest. So in your target audience, just think about that and think about ways that you could do that and see if it's a strategy that you think is going to work. For me, like I said before, I decided to go all in on Pinterest. And I said, I'm going to give it 6 months and I'm paying somebody to do this. So one of those things. And then at the end of the 6 months, I was like, I'm not even going to assess what's happening. I took a look at the stats, of course. I was looking at that. But I was like, I'm not going to assess and I'm not going to cut bait until I see if this is working. And then I saw it was working. But it took that kind of upstart to get the algorithm picking you up, seeing the activity. It's not something that you can just do once a month. But you could schedule it in Tailwind once every 10 days, I think, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that was insightful. Any final thoughts from anyone else on the panel before we land this plane?
I actually really want to say thank you, Anna. You really did a deep dive there and you really shared so much. I'm not going to lie. I have like a little anxiety thing whenever you said at the very beginning, like you should have a YouTube channel and you should have an IGTV and you should have a Pinterest and you should have, I'm not going to lie, like it is a lot. So I love that you sort of came full circle on this and suggested a VA. If anybody's going to add more places and more apps to explore and put their content on, at this stage in the game, it's almost easier to consider hiring a VA because they're going to get it right out of the gate for you. And then you can explore it for a window of time, like 3 months or 6 months, like Anna did, and decide if it's really moving the needle for you. But I have to say, like I might explode if I have to add one more app. But I want to thank you. That was like a masterclass. You were awesome. Thank you, Anna.
Oh my God, I get it. But everything you want to know about Pinterest was just laid out for you, and take it or leave it. And maybe this is the first time you hear it and it's got to digest a little bit too, because it is a lot. It's a whole other thing. It's a whole other animal. It's a beast. So just thank you for listening and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Anna. You're such a legend. I just love listening to you, and thank you for just downloading all this. I've got pages of notes. So thank you. We'll see you next week. Follow the club. And thank you, team, for being here. I really, really appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed that conversation because we loved that conversation. And we have to say that we have started to do some things on Pinterest as well. So here are 3 small steps. Well, actually 1 small step that will help you use Pinterest better for your podcast to get more listeners and clients and credibility. Step number 1, set 20 minutes on the clock and write down what topics your audience would like aggregated or topics that your audience would like grouped together. For example, for me, someone who helps business owners who have a podcast to grow listeners, clients, and credibility, my people would like something to the effect of 5 engagement tricks that will make your audience buy from you. And if I had them in an article or a video, that would be something of use. Another thing would be how to use your podcast episode content every week on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok. That would be super useful. So for your audience, what topics would they like aggregated, grouped together for them? That is all you got to do. 20 minutes. If you can do that, that will make this episode so much more valuable for you. Today's episode is all about that number 1 thing. So if you do thing number 1, that's it. Then you can figure out how you're going to cover that. Are you going to create a live show, blog post, podcast on those topics that you've aggregated? So just focus on doing that number 1 thing. If this is the first episode you're listening to all the way to the end, or if you are a regular, thank you. I love that you're here. Check out our back catalog on shouldistartapodcast.com. Subscribe to the show and give me a review and rating. It really helps us get found. So please, if you have a chance, 5 seconds, please do that. A review and rating would help massively. If you are a business owner and want to join others just like you in a group where we share tactics and ideas on what's working for us in our business when it comes to our podcast in the best possible way, well, using our podcast in the best possible way, go to wearepodcast.com/group. It is free. And if you didn't know, We Are Podcast 2022 is happening this year for all the latest announcements on Australia's first podcasting conference. We've been doing this since 2015. Join the group, wearepodcast.com/group. Stay tuned next week when we are going to cover making sales from your podcast. We cover lots of cool stuff, including how to use your podcast content and audience to make sales in your business, as well as some interesting tricks that I think you have definitely not heard of before. So don't forget to subscribe to the show to get that episode as soon as it gets released. Until then, much love. All right. So you still till the end. You found this useful and you have a business or you have a podcast and a business and you kind of want to make it work for you and grow your business using this podcast. Well, you know what? That's something that I have helped thousands of people do and thousands of businesses do in different forms, through an agency in a one-on-one fashion, through a conference, in a group, and obviously in courses and stuff. So please, I want to be able to give you something that you can use to get recurring results in your business using a podcast. We call it the Recurring Results Roadmap. It is years of putting this in practice. It is the blueprint to get results and recurring results using a podcast. If you'd like that, send me a message, ronsley@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your voice, or want to hear from you. So if you've listened to this and you want that roadmap, please send me an email, ronsley@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. Much love. I'll see you in the next episode.